In the fall of 1932, the grand democratic experiment was failing, and America was in free fall through the Great Depression. With local and state governments out of money, and with millions starving, homeless, out of work, and out of time, more people were leaving the country than arriving. Then, in November, the American people petitioned Franklin Delano Roosevelt to reorient the role of government by invoking the constitutional promise to promote the general welfare. His presidency would transform America, but he didn't do it alone. Only a dozen years after women gained the right to vote, the first woman named to a presidential cabinet would inspire a profound change in the way that Americans lived their lives.
American life today would be unrecognizable without the architecture to it that Frances Perkins supplied. There is no contribution that a cabinet member has made in the history of this country that has had the lasting kind of effect on all of us and the way we live than what Frances Perkins did.
She inherited part of a tradition of service. She was its caretaker for a little while, and she passed it on to another generation.
And she had that burdensome conscience that drove her to get something done that would probably make the most significant difference in the life of America than almost anything you can name.
And so there was a timelessness and a transcendence to the quality of her work, just a natural part of the fabric of American society right now.
Societal insecurity could not have been higher than in the Depression. And there was a general sense that we have to do something. We have to do something. And so into this enormous, churning, seemingly endless, insecure society, they introduced the notion of a secure society, social security. I do not believe that the Social Security Act would have made it into law without Frances Perkins.
Prior to the creation of Social Security, only 1 out of every 100 Americans had any provision at all for retirement. Their bodies worn out, in poverty, in misery, many of them shipped to what we knew as the poor farm, warehouses of death, where most of the elderly went to live and to die. Poverty is tough, misery is difficult, pain and suffering are hard, but nothing equals the loss of self-esteem in a person's life. And Frances Perkins changed that.
What Frances Perkins tried to do was to speak to a level of discontent, a level of unhappiness, a level of misery. In the moment in time in which she was operating, she was just an unusual figure, unusually committed, unusually brave, alone in a world full of men, moving into a sphere that no woman had ever moved into before. I think for all that, we owe her a good deal of thanks.
During her 12 years as Secretary of Labor, Frances Perkins suffered public insults, attacks on her manner and dress, lies about her birthplace and ethnicity, death threats, and finally, an unsuccessful impeachment attempt. Through it all, she worked 15-hour days to shorten work hours for others. She crusaded for the poor and homeless, even as her own home was broken by disease and separation. She was able to help weave the torn fabric of a failing democracy into a new design for government that would change life for every single American.
She was a woman of vocation, of service. She was not a woman of selfishness. She was not a woman of decadence. She was not a woman of scandal or dishonesty. And she cared about having an inner constancy and an inner integrity to herself. So she was not scattered. And so the outward expression built the inner core.
Some of us decided that the purpose and the reason for a government should be the improvement of life for all of its people. The great idea of conducting a government for the benefit of the people who live under it. I have spent most of my adult life in the service of the people of my country, working to improve their living and laboring standards. I have done what I could in my time to make this great country of ours a little nearer to our conception of the city of God.